Hello and good morning or good afternoon, I guess. I am Michael Bartlett, and this is Merrylin LeBlanc with Deep Dives with New Perspectives. If you like what you see, please hit the like button, hit subscribe. Thank you for all of our new subscribers. I think you guys all enjoyed our Mercury talk last week. And this week, what do you think we should talk about, Merrylin?
Well, Mars just went into Cancer a few days ago, so why not Mars? Um, we can, we could go in order, but why not go in what's new these days? And Mars
Exactly.
in Cancer is a rather awkward place to be. Some strange, awkward things, some strange actions. There are maybe changes, like we usually do this in the morning, but obviously schedules changed today for some reason or other. And yes, several things have changed today, but
Yes.
that's neither here nor there. Yeah, Mars and Cancer. What do you think?
Well, it's funny because I think right away, I think of the energy of like an astro theater, the imagery that we created. Um, Mars being dressed up in his suit of armor in Aries and being ready, prepared for battle. But then once in Cancer, or in Gemini, sorry, out there like kind of doing things and being things, and then going into Cancer, being like, hey, it's time to settle down, maybe have a family,
Put
you
the
know
apron on.
but yeah, exactly. But maybe cook, that's a great chef thing, right? Or to be honest, anyone who does any sort of like acupuncture or surgeries, actually, what I find is those Mars with water signs are actually typically very good surgeons.
Well, Mars is about our chi, our life force energy. And Cancer is extremely nourishing. I don't know about you. That was my computer making noise. But I don't know about you, but um, people that I know who have strong Cancer in their charts, like Cancer suns, Cancer moons, or lots of planets in Cancer for that reason, I find very comforting to be around. Their energy is basically, let me take care of you. Let me, are you, do you need anything? Do you want anything? Are you comfortable? Is this fine? Is this, they're very solicitous in terms of your needs. And, and Mars would energize that, because wherever Mars is, it brings energy to it. However, we've talked about this before. Mars is in its detriment in Cancer, because the opposite sign, Capricorn, is its exaltation. Because in Capricorn, Mars gets a lot of stuff done. It's like it's almost like executive energy. Like, okay, who's on my next on my agenda? Oh yes, I have that meeting. Okay, you need this and that. Okay, that's taken care of. Let's go on to the next thing. I mean, it's like boom, 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 and things are done. Whereas in Cancer, the energy is telling Mars, you can slow down a little bit, take it easy, find a comfortable chair, or at least offer it to others if you only have one.
But something that's funny, I was thinking about this the other day, is I've always thought of Cancer as being nurturing for other people, but I actually think the truth is because it's within, it's the first of the four signs, it's the fourth sign, it's actually really about nurturing the self, right? Or nurturing its clan, nurturing its own family. So there's really not, because I think there's been times like I think where I've been upset. I mean, I have a lot. I always draw Cancers to my life because it creates a grand sextile, or it finishes a grand sextile in my chart. So I've always got Cancer individuals around me, but I always am like kind of wanting them to extend themselves a little bit more towards me or towards others. But I find it's really they're just extending what it is that they want for themselves.
Interesting. Because one of the things about Cancer is the nurturing of the individual. And of course, with a strong Mars, I mean, especially related to Aries, you know, the person could say, I am the individual, so I need to be nurtured. It's time for me to be on vacation. It's time for me to be at the spa and,
Exactly.
get the facial and the massage and
Right. Right. Because Cancer is a dual sign, so there's this inherent sense of like, there are two parts that need to be resolved. And we don't really, it's funny, we don't really talk about that much with Cancer being a dual sign. But I think Mars kind of helps split that open a little bit, because there is that part that it's cardinal, right? So it does get things done. But there is this part of like, it can really be a homebody. Maybe it's more about getting things done around the home, or, especially with Mars there. I mean, I think you can get, like, okay, like what are the duties when you're like a home chef, so like what kind of different kind of cooking things do we want to do, that kind of thing. But what do you think about Mars in general? What strikes you about Mars?
well, I often think of initiating things,
Mm.
like I've got to do something different. But what's on my mind, and I wanted to ask you when you were finished talking, is you talked about Cancer being a dualistic sign. Did you elaborate on that?
Look at the glyph, right?
Yes.
It's this.
Right.
And so that is inherently, there are two parts to it, just like Pisces, just like, I mean, it's interesting, like with esoteric astrology, they talk about, the dual signs, and that's one of them. So it's like there's, Cancer actually has a duality about it. We think of Cancer as being like this kind of one-sidedness, but it's like, there is that kind of that hard shell it has, right? It's a crab, but it's
Mhm.
also protecting that soft inner side to it. And it can
So
be
there's the
really
inner and the outer,
inner and the
the
outer.
mother and the father that make up the family. I mean, we have single parent families, but initially there were two. I
Right.
mean, we haven't seen any hermaphrodites of late, although who knows, they may be among us. I don't know. But yeah, okay.
That's what I was
Because
meaning, yeah, because I mean, and like some of the glyphs are, like Libra is a dual sign. Some even, I mean, in the esoteric teaching, they actually talk about Aries because of the two horns, and Taurus also being a dual sign. It's kind of very interesting to kind of
yeah.
look at them in a different kind of a light in that way, but that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, no, but thanks, because I wasn't quite sure how you were seeing
Sure.
that, and now I get it. But going back to your question about, how I see Mars, and for me, it has a lot to do with initiating energy, and I can't talk about it right now, but Mars Mars is just ending a transit through my ninth house, and most of my ninth house has Gemini in it, but just a little bit of Cancer. But Mars is just going to move into my 10th. And one of the things that I've had put a lot of energy into was a proposal, an actual grant proposal, which I won't talk about, which is seems to be being received favorably.
Nice.
And to me, it has something to do with education. So the ninth house is higher education. I wouldn't, well, it could be in the sense of using astrology, which brings us more into the, from the eighth house, the occult world, and into higher learning, more philosophical
Mhm.
learning, etc. And so I'm looking, given that nature, as Mars moves on, I'm looking forward to what Mars in my 10th house might have to say. So far, so good, knock on wood. My desk is wood. So
Well, Mars,
yes,
I think, like
that's
our drive, our passion, our desire, and just the glyph itself. This it's the symbol for for male or men, right? So it's the circle with the arrow, and it's like it pierces things. It creates an opening for other things to happen. It's kind
right.
of necessary.
Right, but it also represents the masculine principle, which is an initiating principle. It's like going for it, going out there, as versus
Assertive.
being asserting yourself, as versus, being receptive, which is more Venusian, and we may talk about Venus soon.
Kind of
um,
hard not to bring her up when you talk about Mars. I
right,
mean,
because they're a couple, that's the energy that we refer to when we talk about any kinds of relationships, actually. Because besides being representative of the male versus the female, Mars is that masculine, which we all have. We all have masculine and feminine in that distinction, of gender versus an energetic way of responding or dealing with something. Yeah, so those are a couple things that are definitely there for me. And the other thing too that struck me, looking at Mars in Cancer, and it doesn't really, because I thought about this for a while, and I thought, well, it doesn't really quite do this, but while it's in Cancer, it's going to make major connections to the planets in Aquarius, those outer planets in Aquarius, as well as at Pluto in Scorpio. That's not till about the end of May.
Pluto and
It'll be
Capricorn.
opposite. But it'll also trine later in middle of May, that Neptune. And for some reason, the Mars in Cancer made me think about Black Lives Matter, and it's sort of like the energy of families that have had to become militant in order to protect what little family they have left. And the families coming together in an emotional way to make a statement of, hey, we're humans, we have feelings, we have family, we have losses. Because there's a part of Mars too that, I mean, it's like Mars can represent the deaths in those families. It can also represent the militancy in those families. um and and there's both. We're seeing, every day in the news.
And
It's
the sacrifice the families have made. I mean, these families, I mean, these individuals are being sacrificed for the collective so that this greater awareness is happening. And it's like, this has been going on for centuries, and it's now finally coming into our awareness in a way that actually it has an opportunity to be resolved, which is very, which is really powerful.
well, and with the Mars, you know, applying to a trine 120 degrees from Neptune, and the applying aspects are when that energy is at its strongest, I think.
Mhm.
Um, that that's kind of led me to this whole bondage, slavery, disadvantaged, discriminated against, which is very much a Pisces water energy. But in each of in each sign, there's all of the other signs, and in each 10 degrees of a sign are the other signs in the same element, the same water. But actually, the part that would represent Neptune will be towards the end of May, the last 10 degrees or so. But I just find that how that is escalating these days. I drew Mars into that, and it's representing the brutality which has become so apparent. And so people that I know that are pretty conservative about some people, in terms of how people are treated, or how the economy's going,
Mhm.
have shared the sadness and the shock of what's been happening in the Black communities in terms of violence. I mean, it's it's going to connect us as it goes through Cancer, even more so, to that collective energy of the suffering that's going on, not only here in this country but all over the world. And if you think about it, in going back to chi and health energy, et cetera, and COVID, and how there are countries where hardly anybody has gotten a vaccine. And, that's going to be more and more in our face. And there's been articles about the fact that we may end up with surplus here that perhaps should be sent to some of the countries that don't have any.
Well, we're starting to pledge that anyway. With Biden in the office, at least we'll see some sort of humanitarian offering, and an understanding this is a world issue that we're all going through.
Yeah.
I think this the Mars Neptune, the Mars Cancer, really can help in a way almost even the playing field, like allowing others to understand. There are so many. I mean, and when you think about how many others who have been killed randomly because of our lack of protection with our gun laws, the lack of background checks. I don't what is so I'm not quite sure what is so painful and problematic about doing time checks and having a waiting period when there's so many other things in life that you have to have waiting periods for.
Hmm. Yeah.
You've lived your whole life and all of a sudden, oh, I need to go hunting. Like, oh, and I have to do it right now. Well, you know what? You can't wait for 3 days. I mean, what is it that requires that level of immediacy? And I think, one of the nice things is maybe we'll be able to start seeing. I mean, the weird thing is, like, did you hear a couple of years ago about, or not even, I think last year, or the year before, like the amount of, what they call it, malfeasance and within the NRA? The mismanagement of funds, and how is it even really a nonprofit when they've been using it as a for-profit, and so much money and the benefits like the people at the top are making, and this arsenal. I mean, the amount of guns that have been sold in this last year for the for the pandemic. And now what, the Supreme Court is going to be hearing a case on it from New York regarding Second Amendment rights of owning a firearm. So maybe we'll see something that has to, maybe we
I
might.
think the Supreme Court not too long ago dealt with a guns issue, and has been
They're doing it
taking.
again.
They're doing it again, right? But so far they've been. I don't understand their interpretation. I mean, a few different people on the court the last time, I guess, too, but even they're more conservative now. And that interpretation, to me just feels like, wait a minute. We
At the
have,
same time.
yeah, every state has a state militia. We have on the federal level armies, navies, Marines, Air Force, whatever. Um, and I'm not against guns in the sense of people who want to go hunting for food. And in many states, I don't know what it's like from state to state, but I know that many states have certain requirements. You have to get special licenses, and you can only kill so much, et cetera. And I don't have a problem with that. But I just, but this whole thing that thinks Mars, guns, and cancer, families, et cetera. And I just basically, and I've said this to some friends, so you have a gun. I said, so somebody breaks in, do you think you're going to be able to go get that gun before you're harmed? Good luck. I mean, somehow there's just some real irrational thinking around that.
Well,
But
and
that
I
is,
think, the truth is cancer security seeking, right? So with Mars and Cancer, this is also kind of an excuse for it, because it's fear based. What happens if someone's going to break into my home? Well, if I have a gun in my home, I feel safer. Well, it's exactly like you said. Like, the person breaks into your house, you have the gun in your nightstand, and if
or you
you're an
have it locked
appropriate,
up in a safe,
yeah, well, and if you're an appropriate gun owner, it's not loaded. I
right?
mean, there are all these factors in you getting to that and doing doing it, and so you can do it. Be able to do so, have it effective, and I don't know. And then there's more chance of you harming one of your family members, or your family members harming themselves, than an intruder breaking into your home in the first place. So,
And then you can get into energetic thinking, and I mean, some people, this isn't necessarily astrology here, but many people who are into the occult and metaphysics think, if you're so caught up
mm,
in the use of guns for safety, you're setting up a world for yourself in which you may have to confront that.
Well, at least have to engage it. And it's very interesting, that as we're talking about Mars, I've seen something very interesting over the years in people's charts, and it usually involves like a Mars, Pluto, Mars, Saturn kind of relationship in the chart. Sometimes it's usually Mars and an outer planet. And there's something like if individuals don't deal with their own anger and rage, that they will constellate that in the world around them. So they might not be the one having these hard things happening, but they might have next door, there might be a murder, there might be, these weird things that happen consistently, these really horrific acts of terror and rage and anger that are played out around them that you really can't pinpoint to them, but it's like because it's like it's not being owned. Because Mars is this very interesting thing. How do we own our anger and aggression? It's not polite to be angry, is it? It's not polite to show our rageful face. We had 4 years of a president showing what it was like to be in almost a constant Martian state of a temper tantrum, right? There's always a reaction. That's one of Mars's things, right? It reacts. It doesn't usually think about things, right? It's immediate. It's instinctual. It feels like it's going to be under attack at any moment.
That sounds too like a lot of like the Mars and Scorpio energy, which is also a water sign, but much more on the alert, a greater sense of vulnerability, and hence way more protective, even though Cancer can be a very protective sign. Both of them have natural protections in their animals. The crab has the shell and pinchers, and the scorpion has its stinger and tail, yes.
And it's hard shell too. And it's
yeah.
not even a water creature. What is that about?
Well, it likes to live in the underworld. And there are and water tables are, I mean, basically, if we didn't have water tables in this state, most of us wouldn't be here because there would be no water for us to drink. I mean, there's a few rivers, but
and they say like when you go, like especially like in Arizona, where it's in the desert, but there are places where they do the irrigation and things, right? Where the irrigation pumps are with little drops of water, you open it up and there are just millions and millions of scorpions.
Oh yeah, yes.
So what else about Mars? So Mars, I mean, it's also, I mean, of course, because it does represent masculinity, it has like kind of the phallic symbol with that arrow sticking out there. It's that with Venus, it's that which joins, right? The sacred masculine and the sacred feminine come together and they create something new. Mars is always kind of like, kind of ready for what comes up, right? Our friends who have strong Mars in their charts typically are available at a moment's notice.
Yeah, I have this book called about Mars and Venus in terms of their sexual preferences. It's actually quite an interesting book. I've shared segments of it on Moonwise from time to time. And I didn't even think about looking about what it says about Mars and Cancer, but I would imagine it would say something about um, the lover who wants comfort food and feeling cozy and hugs and that kind of uh, ego nurturing, perhaps, where they get, it's sort of like not sex with the mother, but feeling a mothering process in their sexual behavior. That's, I think, would be something that this book would say. The book is just right over here somewhere, but I'm like all the books behind you, I wouldn't necessarily grab the same one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, so and I would just think that Yeah, there are people, the zodiac signs can give us an inclination about one's sexual life, what's their sexual preferences, whether they're, monogamous or not, or whether, and I would think that Mars in Cancer would be more monogamous than, what's the other word? Yeah, it's what,
Polyamorous.
yes, I would think that would be the case. And actually, it could be, there are ways of looking at whether somebody is homosexual or heterosexual. There are situations that involves more than just Mars and the sign it's in. But Cancer could suggest um, maybe a homosexual preference, depending on a lot of factors. From there's
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
huh?
Because it's a
There's also,
blending of the masculine and the feminine is basically
right.
what you're saying. You got the masculine Mars principle, and you have the Cancer as the feminine principle. And you put the two together, it's kind of, almost like gender fluidity, right? That's one way I would look at it. And also because it's Cancer, maybe meeting people and falling in love with them because you just feel safe around them. You feel a connection, right? Male or female. There's just something you just would feel like, something like, oh, I want to feel that from you.
Yeah, there could be that. Huh. So yeah, what else can we say about Mars
It's
besides?
interesting. I heard something Laura Nalbandian talked about one time is, we think of like Mars and Aries as being like, kind of like a sword carrying, individual. But the truth is that it's almost just the opposite, because they're almost so aware, having Libra across the way from them, they're almost always aware of the cost of doing harm on someone. And so they tend to be, they might not tend to take out the sword until a little bit more of a last resort. At least that's been my experience with Mars and Aries, because I've always thought my sense would be that they'd be very instinctual and be very, one thing they are, I find, is reactionary. I had a relationship with someone for 14 years with Mars and Aries, so I feel kind of like I got a kind of a crash course.
All right, but Mars in Cancer, uh, I would just think there would be more caution there,
Right, right.
perhaps.
And also, when you think about it, of course, it's like when I think about it just moving for us as a collective, Mars having been in Gemini, that's very busybody time. Like we've talked about before, we talked about, the hummingbird and going around and, kind of doing things all over the place. And then in Cancer, it's kind of like, even though it's a cardinal sign, it's like we said, there's almost like this. I just feel like when I think about, Mars moving into Cancer, I just think of an exhale.
Interesting.
After having been in Gemini, right? Because with Gemini, it's like, there aren't any breaks with Mars in Gemini. There are the emergency brakes removed. There are no brakes in the car. It's just forward, 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 and you don't know where you're going to go.
Well, that's like the United States in terms of the Declaration of Independence chart. Mars is in Gemini in that chart. And when you think about our early history, yes, I mean, and what you just were describing just brought manifest destiny up to my mind, and how, they moved across the country, kicked out the natives, and, just took over. And it's almost, of course, it's the sixth house of that chart, that the Sibley chart, which is also a house related to military, or armies and stuff. So it, in the United States chart, it kind of doubly amplifies that Mars chart to have it in that house. But I'm thinking of it as having moved into Cancer. It's in the seventh house of the chart, and and of course, of late, of course, this happened while Mars was still, I think, in Gemini. It could have been even earlier, because as Mars is moving fairly fast, it's spending about a month in a sign these days. Um, but I was thinking about how we've, rejoined um, the climate change Paris Accord, and also, seeking to negotiate with Iran about nuclear development.
The
And
Armenian genocide, acknowledging that. That's very Mars and Cancer. I mean, that's
oh
really a
yeah,
huge Mars and Cancer aspect.
yeah. And well, and also the pulling back of support for what the Saudis have been doing in Yemen, and
Mhm.
yeah, they're
Withdrawing from Afghanistan.
yeah, yeah. That was surprising actually that
Because we don't think of Mars as being, Mars isn't really, in certain signs, it's a little bit more about being passive. And Mars isn't typically passive. Mars isn't typically receptive. It's like something like it's like oil and water. It doesn't really mix, but if you understand how to mix it, which is what takes time to understand alchemically and within ourselves, then we eventually get to that point where we're like, okay, this is the reason why you need to do this.
mm. So, you can also think about Cancer as the family of man,
Right.
our
Yep.
the whole human family. And with Mars, I mean, Mars is there every other year because it takes 2 years to go around the zodiac. So it was there 2 years ago. It's there now. And um I know 2 years ago we would say, we were thinking about the elections and thinking about this cancer country that we're in, and do we need some different leadership. Yet I don't following politics is crazy. I mean, it just you just I kind of do a little spinning on it, but I can't help but think that that still we don't hear as much as I think we need to hear about the climate changing. To me, that's
Hmm.
number one existential question mark about where we're heading.
I
And
seem to be, I feel like I'm hearing that a lot more in the regular press, than ever before. It feels like, that's something that Biden's really wanting to address and is bringing back into awareness. And, of course, and that's going to be, like with so many other things we're dealing with right now, it's all this misinformation. I mean, that's, here's that Neptune and Pisces, these ways in which the media continues to allow myths, truths to be supported. Like on YouTube, here we are, we're doing this show on YouTube. One of the examples is, what is truth versus what is not saying the truth. And then shows like there's a guy who's named JP and he's like strawberry blonde hair long, and he does these things that are completely satirical, but there are certain political parties that are using it to say that these are actually truthfully happening. And it's kind of like this weird, like, it'd be like taking a comedian's jokes and making, oh well, these are facts. Well, it's called sarcasm, it's called irony, it's meant to make you think. It's not literal.
yes, but unfortunately, um, a good sector of the American population is not that sophisticated intellectually.
And that's been because our education system has been really like, flushed, and I hope, with this money that's being put in to kind of help, rekindle the country, and, kind of like another WPA program, which is really actually, to be honest, what the country needs, putting money also into the teachers and getting these kids to have, well-rounded educations that are applicable to what the world is, not some these outdated things or jumping through um, test oriented processes that don't have real life application. I mean, even when I went to school, I wasn't really being taught real life application. But there was a way in which I was being taught um, a certain level of critical thinking that I don't think is really being taught anymore. It's more like, being rewarded for the right answer, but not necessarily knowing how or why you have the right answer or how you got it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the critical thinking part. But yes, so Mars is it's funny, I have this image of a bubble in my head for Cancer, and when you're on the boat on the beach, and the waves come in and then they go out, and you'll see these little bubbles, where some urchin has 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 gone down has gone burrowed
Mhm.
down into the sand, or
Yeah.
whatever, and somehow or other, it's like Mars putting holes in our bubbles,
Hmm.
you know. Uh,
Mars
but
Pearson, when I think of, like going back again with Mars relating to outer planets, like Mars, whenever like Uranus is transiting Mars or squaring, something like that, whenever those two combos are together, I always get very nervous, when I see that in people's charts, by transit or by progression, or just like on the earthly, just as far as where it is, by transit for all of us. Um, it really can signal some pretty, some amazing accidents, right? Depending on what they are, sometimes good. I mean, of course, all this is modified by the signs, right? If you're in supportive signs and it works out really well, or the same elements, but if you're in those squares, especially, or those oppositions, a Mars Uranus square, I've just seen time and time and time and time again, really quite amazing accidents.
mm, mm. Well, that won't happen for until June or July, actually, when Mars is in Leo. But Mars in Cancer, we're going to have a sextile going on in the middle of the month, the middle of May, with Mars and Uranus. So we may end up with quite a bit of unusual activity, unexpected, perhaps, things popping up that, oh, wow, where'd that come from?
The
Oh,
image I
no.
get as you say that is like, I think of like plowing a field, and immediately as you're done plowing, these flowers just flying out behind it, like not even having to grow. It's like just this interesting kind of, because there's a spontaneousness about it. In
Uh,
esoteric astrology, that'd be like a birthing of a new archetype that would be coming in. Like, how do we create something new and unusual, like you said, that is that's fun and lively, because there's a liveliness to it, right?
hmm. Well, that's energy. I mean, maybe go to the mythology, because uh what Mars is the son of Jupiter and Hera, or Zeus and Hera, Zeus, whatever, the
Mars'
leader.
brother. He's brother. Isn't Ares a brother of Zeus or son?
I think he's his son. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure it's his son.
So then Uranus is
And
his great grandfather.
yeah, yeah. But it's like it's like this possibility of 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 a lot of different things coming into being, that, because I think about the father, Zeus, representing um, a new law.
Hmm.
He's not continuing the karma of his father or his grandfather, and so there's this new order, and so his son brings about, and that's like one of the key words for Mars, is to initiate, which is a beginning, new beginnings, new beginnings in our family life. Oh, and it's like, as people are vaccinated, and yes, we're still told to wear masks, but we are seeing this coming summer so far. Looks like it will be different from last summer. There may be sports games going on where people can attend in live. Who knows? Um, new beginnings, but with a twist. Some people, perhaps everybody wearing masks still, but being able to attend. Things of that sort might be happening as we're into spring and the warmer weather coming up. So, are you with me?
Yeah, I was just looking at the, sorry, I was just looking at the when it goes into that sextile position. Looks like it's going to be
The
on
15th or so, around in the middle,
10th of May.
10th. Okay.
No, maybe a little bit later. There's 11. Yeah, about the 12th. There's 11 degrees each. Yeah, on the 12th, 13th, right around in there. Yeah, so I mean that'd be really powerful.
It's on the 11th. I'm looking at a
Yeah,
calendar, an
perfect.
astrology calendar.
Yep.
At both, it'll square Chiron and sextile Uranus. And that the 15th is when it's quincunx Saturn.
Yeah.
So that the middle of May is some
Little test. Yeah.
some testing times.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's good. I mean, this is really a good time to it's time for individuals to not have to fear driving their cars anywhere, people of color not having to worry about their children going to the grocery store to get something and maybe not coming back. I think it's a good time now for us to collectively start addressing these imbalances and understand, I don't know, like I was raised with the idea that we're a melting pot. So how is it that we're not a melting pot? How is it that people don't understand, that we are all these different races, all these different cultures, all these different nationalities?
You and I think you were born in California, right? Yes.
Yeah,
So
fifth generation.
we're both born in California. Had a conversation with another friend born in California recently. She still lives in California. And we were talking about George Floyd and other things. And she goes, there's these women that, through some other friends I've met who are from the South. And listening to them talk, I'm just kind of shocked about the way they talk about Black people. And how she goes, it's like and I said, her name, I said, we were brought up in California. The West Coast is not like the South at all.
No.
Nor is it even like the East Coast. It's very open.
Not like the North at all.
Yeah, very, very open, very mixed. I mean, there are areas that are predominantly one way or another, but
Yeah, but when you walk down the street in Savannah, Georgia, and when a Black person steps off the sidewalk onto the street because you're a white person, I mean, I have to say that was a very humbling, maddening, and saddening moment for me, because that was just nothing I ever experienced in California.
Yeah, right. Well, this is exactly where it's like that world is foreign to us.
Right.
I can remember, like seeing some movies back in the 60s, 70s what's that one when the motorcycle, the Fonda.
Lone Rider or something.
Easy Rider, was
Easy
it? Or
Rider,
something?
yeah.
Yeah, right. And going through the South, and you kind of get this, it wasn't so much about black and white, but you really got a kind of a sense of that's not for people from California, that's not a safe place to go. That was the sense that it gave me, that you didn't have the freedom of movement. And I've friends that I know who've traveled across the country. I've flown in and out of some of those places, but not driven through them. Who have told me stories about needing, they got a flat tire or something, and how careful they were about getting help and what was brought up in conversations, etc. To this day. And we're not exactly that kind of melting. Your vision of a melting pot, I believe, was California. not, not Washington D.C., which is right next to Virginia, mind you, that was a southern state.
Right.
and then Merrill. I mean, you're right on the line, right? They call it the Mason-Dixon line or something like that.
Yeah, we had a Black family next door to us and a Chinese family on the other side of us, and both of them, the fathers worked for IBM. So I mean, it was like it wasn't, and so I didn't have any understanding of that. And I didn't, and being raised Catholic, I didn't know Catholic was bad. I mean, I didn't understand all these things that were unacceptable to, this very small minority of white people who evidently live in certain parts of our country. But anyway, before we offend any more people, or maybe we don't offend any more people, but I think it's really, yeah, I mean, it's time that we have to, maybe the good news is that California is finally infiltrating everyone else around the world and around the country, and everyone else around the country is moving to California because they've always wanted to live there. So,
Oh,
the
but they
road
can't
to,
afford it. They're moving away now. They're moving here.
well, that's why they lost a seat in the Congress, right? I mean, what an interesting time to do
Right.
the sense. I mean, that's a whole other story we can get into next time. Counting's we can talk about counting next time with Venus anyway, right? With because that's Venus likes to keep track of things.
Well, yeah, Venus attracts things. I mean, Mars initiates and Venus they do things a little differently, Or as when some astrologers talk about the two together, Venus puts out what she wants and Mars goes and gets it. So
I was just going to say Mars goes out and gets it, and Venus is there to receive whatever he brings back. I mean, there's that too. So,
there's that too. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Well,
how can people
thank you.
find you?
Okay, moonwiseastrology.com, all one word, moonwiseastrology.com. Merrylin LeBlanc here, and that my email is marylinleblanc@gmail.com, phone number 505-690-1878. All of that information is also at moonwiseastrology.com.
Perfect. I'm excited to say on Thursday, I'm doing a talk on Mercury for Stormy Grace's YouTube Astrology Academy. Just look that up on YouTube. I'll be on Thursday, 11:30 Mountain Time, talking about the beautiful god Mercury, which we talked about last week very nicely. You can find me at coremichael.com. All my information is there. Thank you all so much. Again, like us, share us, subscribe. Thank you for all those of you who've signed and subscribed up lately. Hope you are enjoying our show and looking forward to seeing you all soon. Take care.
Bye.